This is the press conference today, sponsored by Rock the Capitol regarding the retention of Supreme Court Justice Ronald Castille. On the aisle to the left is the program that we had put together, a compilation that Tim Potts put together for us regarding our position in opposition to the retention of Mr. Castille. We also have our statements. If you go to Rock the Capitol, you will see that not only do we have a copy of our prepared report on Justice Castille and our statements, but we have a 10-part series, 10 separate videos on 10 different issues of why we feel Justice Castille should not be retained. In addition to that, we will have subsequent press conferences as we move down the road. Let me just offer a couple of comments before I introduce Tim Potts. The judicial system of Pennsylvania, in our opinion, which has been led by Mr. Castille, has developed or devolved into a partisan branch of government. The judiciary is experiencing a crisis of confidence as a result of judicial malpractice, nepotism, and petty personal rivalries. We all know that the judiciary is a critical part of the democratic balancing act that ensures that executive and legislative branches do not operate outside the rule of law, and we are entering new territory, dangerous territory. We are now facing a potential paradigm shift as the court system's autonomy has been weakened and a growing number of judges are behaving like partisan legislators. We need to ask ourselves the following question. What happens when democracy's fail-safe brake is out of order? We are distributing Put the No in November with the intent of cultivating a discussion among voters regarding the state of the Pennsylvania judicial system. More importantly, we're encouraging voters to ask the governor, legislators, especially senators, and candidates for county and statewide judgeships to read the report. And then ask your public officials if they support Justice Castille's retention for a one-year term in an office that's slated to run 10 years. Now I'd like to introduce Tim Potts, who we asked to put this report together on Justice Castille. Okay?
Thank you very much, Eric, and thank you for coming. During his tenure both as a justice and as Chief Justice, Ron Castille has distinguished himself for poor judgment, legal sleight of hand, intemperance, double standards of conduct, and allowing corruptions in our courts to flourish. In my opinion, he has proven beyond any reasonable doubt that he does not belong on the Supreme Court either now or in the future. Our bottom line message to voters is this. Put the no in November. Vote no on the retention of Ron Castille on Pennsylvania's Supreme Court this fall. We're not alleging anything criminal, only failures of ethics, leadership, and competence. If we had evidence of illegal conduct, we would present it to the Attorney General and let the Attorney General present it to the citizens at appropriate courts. Allegations of criminality are not usually the stuff of elections anyway. The incumbent's record, such as we present today, is more commonly a basis for voters to make their decisions. Nor are we saying that Ron Castille is Darth Vader. We're not questioning his service to this country, nor are we saying that he is devoid of positive attributes. We're just saying that he doesn't belong in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. The report in front of you documents 10 major grievances. Different people will find different reasons more compelling than others. For me, because I love the Constitution and the law, the egregious misinterpretations of the Constitution are the worst offense. They permit, even encourage, a corruption of the executive and legislative branches, a corruption that the Constitution uniquely empowers our courts to prevent. So to me, Ron Castille's decision in a case brought against the pay rates of 2005 is a most serious offense. And allow me to put this decision in context. In 2004, the General Assembly made Pennsylvania the slot machine capital of the East Coast in a manner that I continue to believe was patently unconstitutional. Remember the three most important rules in the Constitution that were designed to protect citizens against stealth legislation. The original purpose rule. It says that a bill introduced for one purpose cannot be converted to a different purpose. In consumer law, that's called bait and switch. The single subject rule. Each bill can deal with only one subject. If the General Assembly has more than one subject, it needs more than one bill. And the 3-day rule. Each bill must be considered on 3 different days in the House and 3 different days in the Senate. With that in mind, here's how the slot machine gambling law was This is the original bill, 1.5 pages, introduced to require background checks of employees in horse racing tracks. It was considered for 47 days in the House and passed without amendment. It went to the Senate where it was considered for 100 days and then amended with this. 146 pages of legislation that the public had never seen, ever. And this is every word that the two versions have in common. These are not words, these are the names of the legislative sponsors. This was passed into law in a matter of hours, and so this is every word of the original purpose that survived into the final law. It is every word that actually got 3 different days of consideration in the House and 3 different days of consideration in the Senate. And this, I'm sure you know, has a lot more than a single subject in it. It has several subjects in it that should have been done in different bills. The League of Women Voters and others challenged this law in court, the Supreme Court to be exact, because the slots gambling law gives the Supreme Court original jurisdiction on any constitutional matter involving the slots gambling law. How convenient. During the months that this case was pending before the Supreme Court, the leaders of all 3 branches of our government, the governor, the chief justice, and legislative leaders, were holding secret meetings about the pay raise. Some judges have told me that they received regular briefings during the year about the progress of the pay raise. In short, the only people who didn't know the pay raise was being planned were the people who were going to have to pay for it. In late June 2005, the Supreme Court ruled that the way the slots gambling law was enacted was okay with them. 2 weeks later, the General Assembly passed the pay raise using exactly the same procedure. Why? Because the Supreme Court had just told them it was okay. I believed then, and I believe now, that the result of the lawsuit against the slots gambling law was batting practice for the pay raise case. In my opinion, the 2 matters were inextricably linked in the secret discussions about the pay raise. That brings us to the lawsuit against the pay raise. By the time the case was decided in 2006, the pay raise had caused the defeat of former Justice Russell Nigro, the first time voters had thrown a sitting Supreme Court justice off the bench in our history, and the near defeat of former Justice Sandra Schultz Newman. In his decision in the pay raise case, Ron Castille did a few especially egregious things. First, he declared the unvouchered expenses lawmakers had received to be unconstitutional, but then he allowed lawmakers to keep the money anyway. This is like letting a bank robber keep the cash with a get-out-of-jail-free card signed by the judge. Then Ron Castille's decision allowed the judges to keep the pay raise. This marked only the second time in American jurisprudential history that a court refused to honor a clause in the law that said if part of the law was declared unconstitutional, the entire law was unconstitutional and never took effect. Castille's decision just happened to benefit himself and his fellow judges. Third, in the climate of reform created by the pay raise of 2005, Ron Castille and his fellow justices had the opportunity to declare that the Constitution means what it says, that stealth lawmaking would not be tolerated any longer, that the courts would protect people from the excesses of the executive and legislative branches. Ron Castille blew it. The Supreme Court's endorsed method of stealth legislation still is the law of our land. So it is no surprise that Ron Castille's record shows his fingerprints on scandal after scandal, from the Kids for Cash scandal to the Philadelphia Family Court scandal to the Philadelphia Traffic Court scandal. Ron Castille's record shows a failure of leadership to achieve higher standards of public integrity, such as those advocated by the American Bar Association and the Interbranch Commission on Juvenile Justice, to bar nepotism, cronyism, and gifting. And Ron Castille's record shows a commitment to preserving the good old boy system of legislative gerrymandering that has ill-served our citizens and now will continue to serve us badly for the next 8 years. We have sent this report to Mr. Castille, to the deans of Pennsylvania's law schools, to the president of the Pennsylvania Bar Association, the president of the Pennsylvania News Media Association, and the president of the Pennsylvania Cable Network. We have asked them to sponsor discussions between Mr. Castille and me about issues of court administration and whether he should be retained on the Supreme Court. I offer myself for this purpose because I am a private citizen. I'm not an attorney, but I am a voter charged by the Constitution, as are all voters, with the duty to elect the members of our judiciary. I hope that Mr. Castille will agree to such discussions at events sponsored by one or all of these organizations. It could make for the best informed electorate in a long time on judicial issues. In the meantime, I urge voters everywhere to prepare themselves to put the no in November and remove Ron Castille from the Supreme Court. Thank you very much. I look forward to your questions.
And about two-thirds of your critique here applies to the other Supreme Court justice seeking attention that's there, but you're only at this point urging to know how to vote on Mr. Castille, even though almost all the systemic things you said, the scandal so much, well, hits for that probably, I don't know how you cross the line. Why is still not there?
The question is, there are two justices up for retention election this year, including Max Baer, whose record on the cases that were decided is identical and nearly identical as far as I know with Justice Castille's. Why aren't we going after Justice Baer? I can only do so much. Frankly, if there's a case to be made against Mr. Baer, I hope somebody will make it. This was as much as I could do, and of course there are some unique things about Justice Castille, such as his supervision of the Philadelphia Family Court and supervision of the Philadelphia Traffic Court. Those are unique. Yes.
So are you proposing sort of like a debate in a retention race? Is that what you have in mind? Series of debates?
Yes. The question is, am I proposing something of a debate in the retention race? And yes. I prefer to call it a discussion because I don't want it to be as adversarial as I want it to be educational. Now, it's bound to be adversarial when we talk about whether he should be retained. But on matters of judicial administration, on matters of judicial ethics, whether we abide by the American Bar Association Code of Ethics or not, those things can be more of a discussion. So I'd rather call it that, but call it whatever we will.
Do you have an issue with the fact that he's 69 running for a 10-year retention and want to get a certain year constitutional mandate requiring 70 stands? And do you follow up to that? Do you trust the Supreme Court to make the right kind of decision, or do you do that to be in the case that's before the law?
Yeah, the question is whether it's an issue that he's running for a 10-year term when he's 69 years old and can only serve 1 year before the Constitution requires him to retire. And secondarily, there's a case pending before the court that seeks to overthrow the mandatory retirement age on the basis of age discrimination. I don't think it's a good idea for people to vote and to run for a term of office that they cannot possibly fulfill. And I don't care whether it's a school board, or legislature, or governor, or anything else. I look at elections as contracts with the voters. If you elect me, I will serve the full term to which I'm elected. Now, on the case challenging the mandatory retirement age, I've heard some very cynical things about that it was set up so that a couple of different results could happen. One is that they throw it out and thereby make Castille look good because it would benefit him, and he's not going to do that even though he has a history of benefiting himself from just about everything he does. The other thing is they set it up so that it's a 5-to-1 vote. 5 vote in favor of declaring the age limit unconstitutional. Castille gets to write a dissent and look like a good guy. I don't know. You know, our court system is bizarre, Byzantine, and secretive, and all the rest, and politically motivated. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see how that plays out.